Hello, and welcome to Global Tech Tales. I'm Valerie Potter. I'm managing editor of features at Computer World, and I'm speaking here today with Jeff Foster, Director of Technology and Innovation for Redgate Software. Welcome, Jeff.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Jeff also blogs independently on Substack, and I'm going to be asking him some questions about some of the things he's written. So be prepared. um, so today we are talking about changing culture as an IT leader. There are a ton of factors that go into making a company a great place to work or a not so great one. One factor you've written about that seems squishy but is vitally important is workplace culture. You've called it the operating system of your business that strongly affects how everything gets done. Of course, there are multiple cultures at play in any business, but for this discussion, let's focus on IT culture and how tech leaders can shape it. First, how can IT leaders assess their team's culture? And what techniques have you used at Redgate to discover what's working well and what needs changing?
That's a great question. I think culture is exactly as simple as how it feels to work at the organization. So I think there's a culture model by a chap called Edgar Schein that describes it in three levels. You've got the artifacts of your culture, and those are the things you produce. If I go into your office or virtual office and look around, what do I see? Do I see the stickies on the whiteboard? Do I see well curated backlogs, etc.? Underneath that, you've got your values. How does the company say it wants to work? So, for example, at Redgate, we pride ourselves on creating ingeniously simple software. At Facebook, they used to move fast and break things. Every company has some values they claim to live by. And the final one is the most important one. It's the underlying assumptions of the folks that work at your organization. And ideally, you want these to be aligned with your values, but sometimes they're not. So those three artifacts there are the artifacts, the values, and the kind of tacit understandings, the underlying assumptions that folks make. So you asked sort of how you can assess your team's culture. And if you're immersed in your culture, it's quite difficult to step outside of it and get an independent judge. Some of the things that we've done at Redgate, well, firstly, occasionally we've reached out and got experts from outside of Redgate to come in and talk to us. And they've all operated in the same way. They'll go and speak to a bunch of engineers, just ask lots of questions, and come back and reflect to the leadership team and the organization as a whole what they found. Most of the time when we've done that at Redgate, it's been good because what they found matches what we think we know, and we get good correspondence there. Another technique that doesn't cost any money that every company can do is tap into new starters. So new starters to your organization have that kind of superpower where they've heard the values, they've researched it for the interview, they've had it during their onboarding procedure, they've lived the artifacts, they've spent a few weeks in your office or on your Zoom calls understanding what makes your company tick. But they're forming their own assumptions of what it's really like to work there. And I find it really interesting to find a game of spot the difference, where you ask those new starters, hey, we said this, that, and the other during the interview. You've been here a month now. What of that did we make up, or what of that isn't truly lived? And I think that spot the difference is the best way to assess your culture.
And I would imagine that all of this requires buy-in from the very top levels in order to be able to, both listen to the new and existing employees, and then also say, okay, well, we need to make a change. And so,
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not just I can't remember how you described culture. I think you said culture was a bit squishy
yeah.
in the original. Well, culture isn't squishy. Culture is a genuine thing that helps you provide value to your customers and value to your business. And there's plenty of examples of this. There's the Dora research that showed that certain elements of your culture directly correlated with business results. And there's a million and one pithy quotes like culture eats strategy for breakfast and all that good thing. And culture it is a bit kludgy and squishy. It is difficult to define, but it is incredibly important for business to succeed.
Mhm. Great, yeah, and that is what I meant by squishy, was defining it as opposed to, the thing itself, so what are some red flags, that IT leaders could look out for that might indicate they need to make a change?
Yeah, I think it's I guess one thing I've learned as I've worked around different industries in my career is there is no one right culture that you're aiming for, but there are a couple of things that definitely smell like warning flags to me. The first is this cognitive dissonance, where you've got a company value that you're talking about externally all the time, but you're not living it internally. So if we look at some of there's examples from, I can't remember the large financial services firm that went down. One of their values was, hey, we take looking after your money seriously. Well, obviously they didn't, right? That didn't
Yeah,
follow through with
right.
that. If you've got a company that says the customer comes first and you're hiking prices and ignoring support requests all the time, then you're not living up to those values at a company level. And that kind of cognitive dissonance between what you're saying and what you're doing, that's a pretty big red flag that your culture needs to change. The other thing that I'd say is a universal good is this idea of psychological safety. This idea that you need to create an environment where people are happy to take risks, where people are happy to give feedback. And if you haven't got that, then I don't think you have a robust organization that can survive in the long term. Without psychological safety, you're just relying on one expert making the decisions rather than the wisdom of the crowd and those great feedback channels.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, so once you've identified some problem areas, you know, what next? Maybe first we should discuss what approaches not to take.
Yeah, I think the industry is full of more examples of what not to do than what to do, right? Things like shouting at the front of the company meeting that we've all got to behave in this way rather than that way, that kind of top-down mandate. Obviously, that's not going to work. That's just not the kind of environment we have. Um, I think trying to do a rip and replace isn't going to work either. You can't just change your workforce, put new people in place, do the same things and expect different results. Arguably, you'll get worse results.
Mhm.
And then the sort of final anti-pattern I can think of is cargo culting. And we're going to see this, well, we already do see this a lot. For every successful agile transformation, there's a million where people just play by the rules without really understanding the why and get poor results. I think AI will be exactly the same. Everyone is going to rush to understand and adopt AI without really questioning the why behind it. They're just sort of pretending to do these things. I think if we flip it the other way and try and find the things that work, well, the key point here would be, why are you changing your culture? Like, what aspect do you want to change of it? Why is it important to do that? And if you can't articulate that, then you've got no business changing your culture at all. I also think we often think of culture as the thing we try and change that changes people's behavior, but it also goes the other way. There's a great study in the Toyota literature about how to do culture change really fast. And the key takeaway from that paper is, if you change what you do every day, you change the values. So the example I'm thinking of at Toyota, they used to have a quality problem. They're not associated with that anymore. I think it was a guy called John Shook who went into their factories and saw how the culture was changing. And they introduced new practices such as um, pull the andon cord, stop the production line if any defect is discovered. What better way to get across to employees that quality is a number one priority than stopping the entire organization if something goes wrong?
Mhm.
And putting those sensible intervention points in is a real key, because it shows that management isn't disconnected from the realities of the day to day and are investing in the right things. To give an example, almost every company says they do learning and development. We really value personal development. Do you? Have you created space for people to learn? Have you given a sufficient budget for them to do things? Do you give access to the right tools and techniques? You can't just say, be an L&D organization. You have to put those practices in place to help people get there. So articulate the why, back it up with some practices.
Mhm. Yeah, and to which I would add in terms of, still skills development and other training, do you give them time to do it? As I don't think it's fair to just expect, give supply a bunch of resources and then just say, okay, find your own time, do it on your own time. Um,
Yeah, exactly. I think this. I've been a staunch advocate of Redgate's 10% time since we introduced it 5, 6 years ago. This gives us some time people can use guilt-free for learning and development. It signals to the organization it's not just a platitude. We really want you to keep up to date and upskilled.
that's wonderful. So, one final question on this topic. So, you wrote, remember that your culture is constantly evolving, whether you're paying attention or not. So, do you have any tips for making sure your culture stays positive over time?
Yeah, I think this one's seems a bit obvious again, but it's establishing those feedback loops. Think of culture more like gardening than building something. It needs constant care and attention. If you're not listening to feedback regularly, if you're not surveying people to check that those values line up, those assumptions line up with the company values, then it's going to drift. So having those feedback loops and putting in interventions where necessary, I think that's how you can keep it under control.
Great. Okay. So, moving on to our next topic, you had mentioned a little bit before about AI coming into play, and we can't discuss tech careers without addressing the elephant in the room, and that is AI. And particularly as it relates to Redgate Software, well, and many, many, many other companies out there, is AI powered coding tools, and I'm being a little imprecise by just saying AI-powered coding tools because that actually covers a lot of different technologies and types of tools, but just to simplify, let's just think broadly, or speak broadly, and so some have predicted that AI coding tools will put human developers out of work, but in your blog, you've said you disagree with that. You wrote, "AI will write a lot of code for us, but that doesn't eliminate engineering, it makes it more important. History proves it." So tell me a little bit about that.
Oh, that sounds really grand when you say it like that, doesn't it? And I think throughout history, there's been these examples of um, automation coming along and changing things. But the calculator hasn't got rid of accountants. It's just changed their level to higher levels, right? I think that's what's going to happen. We're going to democratize software engineering, which is brilliant. We're going to have more people building software. How cool is that? We're bringing more people into this profession, and that's going to mean there's more software. Excellent. If there's more software, there has to be more software engineers. Software doesn't stand still. It always moves. User needs always evolve. So I think to me, the idea that software engineers is going to be eliminated by AI is just pie in the sky thinking. You're going to, I don't know quite what people are imagining. Are they imagining if I ask a computer to build something, it will build it and it will be done? Well, then you'll have to deal with all the edge cases, and maybe you need to employ someone to do that. And that person you employ is going to be a software engineer. I think I think there's this paradox called Jevons paradox, which is the idea that um, increasing the efficiency of a resource makes it easier to actually use that thing more. And I think if AI is going to make it easier to write code, then we're going to write more code. If we're going to write more code, then we need more software engineers. And I think there's a lot of doomsayers at the moment who are saying it's the death of the profession. I don't think that could be further from the truth. I think software engineers will become more valuable, more focused on higher level tasks, and there'll be more of them. I'm really excited about the future for software engineers. I'm an optimist, at least today.
Good to hear. Uh, so more practically, what skills or aspects of software development should engineers focus on improving to prepare for the future?
Yeah. So I think there's the technology side of things, which I kind of take as a given. If you're going to ask a bit of AI to write some software, you need to understand what it's written. So the same old software principles apply. You should learn your design patterns, your languages, your higher level architectures, and all of that good stuff. That's never going to go away. AI, you're going to have to judge an AI's work, and the only way to judge it is to have a good appreciation of what it's doing. But I think the other side of things where humans have those unique advantages are, well, firstly, thinking in terms of users. As a software engineer, we build stuff for people to solve problems. They're humans too. And we have this unique advantage that we can talk to them and we can understand and put ourselves in that mindset. We can do empathy. AI is not going to do that anytime soon. So I think that's really important. Don't be that kind of developer with the headphones on typing code. That's the AI's job. Your job is to sort of step up one level higher and speak to the users. I think another advantage for engineers is you've got that abstraction that allows you to think of the system as a whole. So systems are really complicated with lots of moving parts. There'll be a bit of software here, some databases over there, the whole gamut of things. Humans have this great ability to abstract over that and reason about it. I don't think AI is like that. It has to go into the details of everything. So you can take a step back and give a fresh perspective. I guess there's lots of areas. I'll keep going. Stop me if I bore you. There's a real skill at the moment, at least with AI, in giving the right level of detail to an AI. So you can't just ask it to, hey, go and build me this app. You need to define what that app is. And you need to think about that in terms of the user and the technical constraints and so on. And when you're working on existing code, if I work on some of our code at Redgate, it's got 1 million lines of code. I can't fit that all into the AI. I have to use my human judgment about which bits of the code to tell the AI about so it does a good job. And finally, and I promise this is the last one, AI's greatest weakness is actually really similar to that expert beginner thing. So AI will really confidently tell you it is right, and it will persuade you it's right, even though you know it is catastrophically wrong. You need to have that ability to know when it's going horribly wrong. I think my favorite saying about AI is an expert in everything you are not, which I think sums it up perfectly.
Mhm. Well put. And, no, this is not at all boring. These are the questions our readers and listeners have. So, this is all really helpful. Thank you. Um, and so now let's pull back a little bit, and talk about technology roles beyond software development. Do similar lessons apply to IT support staff, sysadmins, network architects, et cetera, et cetera? Do you have any general advice for staying relevant as AI takes over more tasks?
I think my general advice would be, if the work is a well-defined task with inputs and outputs, and you follow the same set of patterns to do it each time, AI is going to be really good at that. So if your job is in that family, then what should you do? Should you run away and find a new career? Well, I hope not. I imagine the thing you kind of do is work out how you can take your level of thinking to the next level. So perhaps for the network engineer, it's not dealing with the mundane day-to-day queries. It's focusing on those higher level tasks, just as software engineers focus on abstraction.
Yep, makes good sense. Um, some industry watchers have said that senior level tech pros will remain important to oversee and orchestrate AI agents, just as you've been saying. But entry level positions will be eliminated as more low level tasks are automated. And do you agree with that? And why or why not?
Yeah, I definitely don't agree with that. I imagine there are going to be some companies that are going to make those kind of decisions. And those are the ones I wouldn't be putting my money on. And the reason is all the reasons we covered in the first section. We're going to be writing more software. There's going to be more software to maintain. We need more software engineers, not fewer. And I guess there could be some, you can see how it would make sense that maybe you can get a super powered engineer armed with 10 AI widgets to code faster than a few junior engineers. I don't think that makes sense from a resilience point of view. The bus number of that, if that software engineer wins the lottery and runs away from your company, you haven't got anyone to fill those shoes. So I think it's a bit short sighted to do that. I'm sure people will, and maybe I'll be wrong and they'll be right. But I guess we'll find out in a few years' time.
Yeah. My money is on your approach. Um, with that in mind, what can IT leaders do to prevent the pipeline of new talent from drying up and give those younger workers the experience they need to develop the higher level skills, the holistic understanding, as you were saying earlier, and and the judgment that's needed to understand when AI is making stuff up again.
Yeah, I think it's encouragement. It's showing that there's a whole generation of people who are going to grow up being able to build prototypes with natural language on the keyboard. My son's 15 years old. He's not going to learn computer programming in the same way that I am. He's going to work with an AI to develop it. I think there's some in the industry that ridicule folks for working in that way and claim it's not real software engineering. But it is. It's the gateway drug for people to get into software engineering. And we should be supporting those folks as they learn to see where the limits of AI are. At a company level, that means engaging with your community, teaching kids to code, to support them with the AI. It means running intern programs to bring people in to see how it works in the real world. And I think it's really important that companies like Redgate and others continue those programs of internships, sponsoring local community groups, and so on, because coding is fun. It's a great way to solve problems.
Excellent. And what is your best advice for developers or other tech workers just getting started in their careers now?
I think be curious, understand how everything works. If you ask the AI to do something and it spits out 100 lines of code, really understand why it's done that. Understand, be curious about everything that's out there and learn as much as you can about it. And AI is brilliant at helping with that.
Great. And speaking of curiosity, I'm curious what AI coding tools do the software engineers at Redgate use, and do you have a favorite?
There's so many tools to use. This is a really interesting question because it's kind of at the whole of do you start as a company, do you start switching to different technology now, or is it too early? And I'm definitely firmly on the it's too early to pick a winner yet. Everything is evolving so quickly. We've had some great experiences with some of the early stage AI software, but I'm really excited to see what comes out over the next few years. And it's going to be radically different to what we've got now.
Gotcha.
I'm
So
dodging the question. So many favorites, but I'm not going to name one.
that's fine. That's fine. So again, it's that curiosity, experimenting with everything, and yeah, that sounds great. Well, Jeff, I really appreciate your time and your insight. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you.